Portage County Board of Supervisors meeting, recorded April 26, 2022.
Clerk will call the roll.
We have 24 attending in person, 1 excused. Supervisor Soik.
Pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I ask everybody that's in attendance, thanks for their input to the community. I appreciate everything that they do to be involved, to share their opinions, their thoughts. Our new supervisors that have raised their hands and said they wanted to be part of the democracy and be involved. I want to make sure that we thank the people that protect us, both in law enforcement, fire, folks on the highway, folks that collect our garbage. Their lives are at risk with being out in the public. I want to also make sure that with all that's going on in the world today, that we're thankful that we have the things that we have, and keep a spot in our hearts for those who don't and that are suffering. Amen. Approval of minutes of April 19th, 2022. Motion by Loddick, seconded by Duback. Any corrections or changes? All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Minutes are approved. Correspondence.
The WC demographic survey, if you have not turned those in, please get those to me at the end of the meeting. And then the forward analytics, flush with cash, Wisconsin's growing financial reserves.
Presentation. The first presentation we have is by our Court Counsel, Ray. Resources to help us navigate the County Board of Supervisors roles. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. I did give you one handout at your seat location. I'm not really going to talk about that one tonight, but I will email that out to you probably tomorrow, because it's got a couple of different hyperlinks in it, and hopefully you'll find those useful. Maybe in particular the new supervisors, although for questions that come up literally for any supervisor, those resources are pretty good. I found them helpful when I first came into my position 5 years ago, and I still refer to them from time to time, especially the open records one and the public records one and the open meetings law guides that the Department of Justice in Madison puts out. If you can't find your answer to questions in those resources, I'd encourage you to ask your fellow supervisors, especially those who you serve on your committees with. And if you're still scratching your head and not sure that you've got the best information, feel free to communicate with the department head involved in the situation you're looking at, and also feel free to contact me in my office. And we've got, besides myself, we have 3 other attorneys in our office and 3 support staff. And our office handles virtually all of the legal matters for the county departments, for the county board. There's rare occasions where we have to hire out outside counsel, but that almost never happens. One example I can give to you about that, though, that we're just getting into right now is we're in the process of transitioning over our Portage County Business Park and the administration of it. We're going to transition that over to an owners association group, because that's how that park was set up 30 years ago approximately. And when we do that process of shifting over the administrative handling of the business work in the park, who hires the people to come in and do maintenance on the fountains, who does the snow plowing and the lawn mowing and all those sorts of things. We'll transition that to this owners group that's all of the people that are the occupants of the park, where the county is likely to hire outside legal counsel to help us with that, because that's a big project, probably beyond the scope of our expertise, and rather than guess and jump in with both feet and not guess right, we obviously want to make that happen correctly. So that's an example of where we'll hire somebody from the outside. I do have a short PowerPoint. I will try to remind myself of my emphasis on the word short. Thanks to Lee, I couldn't get my laptop hooked up to the system, so I emailed it to him, and he's wearing probably a third or fourth hat tonight, helping me out with displaying the slides for us during that presentation. There's a couple of different main points that you'll see throughout this PowerPoint. You don't have to take notes on it. We can email this to you as well if you'd like. But especially again for newcomers, but it's a good refresher for all of us, including myself. Kind of reminds us of what the structure of our county government is, how everything works together, and what everybody's role is in the governmental process. Go ahead, Lee, there you go. I got a laser pointer too. I'll try to actually go back a slide. I'll try to point to certain things in the slides if I want to draw attention to them. And next one, if you would. Thanks. So those are the four main prongs of the governmental structure. We have our county exec under our county form of government, the county board chair, the supervisors, and then all of the committees and boards that the supervisors serve on. Next slide, Lee. The county exec is like is the chief executive officer of the county, just like in a corporation or a business entity. And that position coordinates and directs the administrative functions and management functions of the county. Specifically, in the next one, that county exec also has various powers of appointment, oversees and supervises department heads, submits the annual budget every year this October. Maybe nobody told you about that yet, John, but he'll present the annual budget to the county board for review and ultimate approval at the end of this year. And then the county exec has veto authority, as it's indicated there in the slide. No authority to act on his or her own for the county exec. They're an administrative leader, essentially. Then next we have the county board chair. Obviously presides over these meetings and commonly acts as spokesperson for the board out and about, in the public. Often you'll see the county board chair attending lots of the different standing committee meetings and boards of the county board. Then next, probably most importantly for tonight's presentation, are the supervisors. Supervisors mainly serve a legislative function in things like policy making laws and ordinances, budgetary approvals, and other decision making, working with obviously the departments that each of your committees, your standing committees, is aligned with. And kind of again, just like the executive, the laser doesn't work on the screen. Interesting. Never mind that then. The last point there, that no one individual supervisor has operational authority or control on his or her own. We obviously act together collectively in the committee structure and committee process. The next slide talks about county board functions, as indicated there. I won't read through all of them. And then the step in the process that we haven't delved into yet with this version of the next 2-year term of the county board are the standing committees of the county board. So
In section 3.1 of our Portage County Code of Ordinances, there is a listing of all of the standing committees and boards that are under the umbrella of the county board. And if you haven't gone there yet, I'd encourage you to go there to take a look in particular at the information that's there for each of the respective committees that you'll end up serving on. You can also look at the other ones too, especially sometimes your committee will get a resolution that it needs to review and act on, and it may also have the name for signatures of members of another committee. So if you're new to the process, you can take a look at that committee's information on the ordinance or in the ordinance and see just what it is their function is and why they might have that resolution in front of them, just like it's in front of your committee. Next slide, Lee. And two other points under that heading for standing committees. Any member of the County Board of Supervisors can attend the meeting of any other committee or subcommittee or board in closed session or open session. And we'll talk in a little bit about what closed session is versus open session when we talk about open meetings law. Next slide, Lee. So just general common sense protocol for how to conduct business at meetings, committee meetings. These are not meant to be humorous, but they kind of are in a way. I mean, if you're hearing somebody saying something, or yourself are thinking about saying something that you might not say to your mother, spouse, or child during a meeting, maybe might be better to back off and not use that kind of an approach or that kind of a language during the meeting. Again, mostly common sense stuff. The next slide is a recently adopted by the previous version of the county board code of conduct. And now I give credit to the also known as no fighting, no biting, no hitting, no spitting reference to my legal assistant. Truly, by coincidence, yesterday, she was talking to me about her late father, and she and I weren't even talking about this presentation I was going to give tonight, but somehow it came up in conversation. She said, you know, when we were little kids, my dad always talked to us and gave us these rules to live by, and he said, if you follow those, he said, generally you'll do okay. I said, Helen, can I have your permission to borrow that for my presentation? She said, absolutely. So that's where that came from. That's why it's there. But I thought that was good. Next slide, Lee. The main sections under this new provision in our ordinance, section 3.1.51, lists the main principles and expectations under our code of conduct. We didn't used to have one. And it's not that we necessarily needed one, but we thought, you know what, if we did, it's nice to have something as a backup that's there. So that was, I think, largely the spirit with which the last board adopted that section of the ordinance. But the main principles are those listed there: responsibilities, fairness, respect, and honesty. And then underneath each of those headings in the ordinance, there's a listing of other items and elements that are examples of all of those things. And you can go look at those in the ordinance itself. Under the next slide, we talk about, and this is only as necessary, and if somebody feels that some part of the code of conduct has somehow or another been violated by a person or people, there's really two main ways that you can bring that forward to the attention of decision makers in the administrative structure. One is you can contact or report things to the county board chair. And then secondly, another way to do it is you can submit a verified complaint in writing to my office, and then per the ordinance in 3.1.51, my office processes that written complaint under the Code of Ethics, which is in a separate section of our Code of Ordinances listed there, section 3.6. Next slide, Lee. So the next section of this presentation is the Code of Ethics in 3.6. Go ahead. So the general rules are, this is where we as public employees, elected officials, and including supervisors, as well as all managers and department heads, we want to avoid getting into a situation where it could be construed as having violated the Public Officials Code of Ethics, which basically says that we want to avoid conflicts of interest. Probably the second one there on that first slide is a good example. So if because of a relationship with a family member, you yourself as a voting supervisor are in a situation where you're voting on something in your committee, and that the subject matter of that item up for vote has an impact or even a potential impact on a family member of yours, where there could be, there's a financial gain potentially by the outcome of the decision. Then a lot of times, and this doesn't happen often, but in those circumstances, you may hear one of your fellow brother or sister supervisors say, I'm going to abstain not only from the vote on this topic, but also from the discussion on it, because I have a family member in the business or the industry, and I don't want there to even be an appearance of impropriety that I'm trying to steer the issue in one direction or another. So that's one example. In the next slide, Lee, I probably should have started with this. This code of ethics applies not just to supervisors, but all elected officials, all county employees, managers, and department heads. So this is something that we're all generally aware of. And this is an example of where one of those situations, if something comes up and you're scratching your head saying, gee, is this what they mean by, that this could violate the code of ethics? Again, check with your committee chair perhaps, or the department head, or call our office, and we'll work through the scenario with you and give you, our advice as to whether or not that could constitute a conflict. Ultimately, the decision would be up to you, but we do our best to work through those scenarios and give you some advice, because in the end, we want to keep things running smoothly, and we want to fly under the radar, not the opposite. Next slide. In that code of ethics, in our ordinance, one of the general basic rules is nobody can accept gifts of nominal value, or nominal value is okay, $25 or less. Those things are excluded, but anything of value greater than that, we don't want to be accepting things like that, because that could be construed as somebody trying to give us something in exchange for a vote or favorable treatment on something that they may be interested in that the county is doing. Don't use confidential information that you might gain from something your committee is working on for private gain, personal gain. Don't use county property or resources for personal gain. Everything we use here is connected with our roles as supervisors. My role as a county employee for doing our jobs, and that's the scope, and it needs to stay there. Next slide. If there is ever a situation, and actually I can't think of one in the 4 or 5 years that I've been here now, which is good, but under the Code of Ethics, enforcement, again, starts with a verified complaint submitted to my office. There may or may not be investigation and a hearing before the Executive Operations Committee. And then if the ordinance is found to have been violated, the violation forfeiture that can be assessed is anywhere between $100 and $1,000. Next slide, next topic. Open meetings law. We list the statute numbers there. Next slide, if you would, Lee. So the general rule here is that all meetings that the governmental entity, the county, and any of its committees hold are held in open session. They need to be available and accessible to the public in a physical space that is generally reasonably accessible to everyone who would like to attend. unless there is some other component in the law that creates an exception. And there are a few, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. So notices for all meetings are published. In our case, they're posted. Are there 3 locations where you post, Lee? Yes. Where are those?
One's in the annex building, one's in the courthouse, and one's in Health and Human Services.
Okay. And then we also post them on our county website. And those are posted, as it indicates here in the slide. Notice needs to be given at least 24 hours before the meeting is going to be held. And there's the statutory references for you if you do want to go and take a look at those. Next slide talks about an interesting conundrum that's easy to have happen even though people don't intend for it to happen, and that's something called a walking quorum. And that's where you have a number of people from any particular committee who communicate about a subject matter that the committee is likely to take up at a future meeting, and you're communicating with your fellow committee members about that topic prior to the open meeting. And the reason this is all under the open meetings law heading is that you can end up having a quote-unquote walking quorum, therefore a meeting, even though that gathering hasn't been properly noticed. The notice is published prior to the gathering and the meeting happening. Note the last item on that slide says that, so if you had 5 members of a committee and 3 of them were talking, even if it's one-on-one, if I called somebody else and then that supervisor called somebody else, that's a walking quorum, because now you've got 3 out of the 5 and you're talking about something that the committee is either is going to deal with or it's on the next agenda or whatever. But that last point is significant. It's only a violation of the open meetings law if what you're talking about is something that is the governmental body, that committee's business. If you have a chance meeting of a quorum of supervisors from your committee at the grocery store or at a church picnic or something like that, that gathering in and of itself doesn't violate the open meetings law, and it's not a walking quorum unless you start talking about the business of the committee. We got a question.
Yeah, I always like to go to the legal seminars down at the fall conference, and a couple times they use the same analogy, which I think is the easiest way to remember a walking quorum. And they said, a walking quorum is half of a in-person quorum, or any of a quorum of a committee. So if you have 4 members on a committee, a walking quorum is just 2 people talking. So it's they said it's one of the widest inadvertent violations people have. And they also said that if you're coming to a meeting, and the meeting, you're half an hour ahead of time, hold your discussions until the meeting starts, because if you start lobbying your case beforehand, that's a walking quorum. Right. So everything that, he basically said, anything that to do with making a decision at that meeting, keep it in the meeting and you'll never be in trouble. You can say whatever you want in a meeting, but before that meeting, the only reason you should talk to another person probably is on whether you can make the meeting or not. You can call the chairman and say, hey, I'm sorry, I can't make it or whatever. But that's it. And if they remember it's half of a regular quorum, which can be most of the time just 2 people, then it keeps it simple.
Right. Thank you, Supervisor Splinter. Those are good examples. Supervisor Jakowski.
Thank you, Corporation Counsel Ray. One thing I would like to see on there, or like you to talk about, is how the reply all on an email can create this very easily. We had a supervisor last term that had a tendency to reply all the time, and that in effect is creating a walking quorum.
Yes, it certainly could. And email was going to be my next example. So whether you're sending an email, if you send it to the whole committee, you shouldn't do that. If you want to communicate something to the committee chair to be brought up at the next meeting, that's usually okay, unless it's, you know, a 4-person committee and then there's the 2 of you. You can also communicate with the department head, because that's an employee. The employee is not a member of the committee. But then when you're replying to emails, kind of pay attention to who's on the addressee list of the email. And if you do hit reply all, a lot of times, again, and I'm sure it's innocently enough, but don't get caught in that trap, because if you reply all and it's everybody on the committee, then as a technical matter, it is probably a violation of the open meetings law, because I'm assuming at that point that's the subject matter of the email is what the committee is going to be talking about at a future meeting. Next slide, thankfully.
Dave, one other thing I'd like to add, though, if there are things you want to convey to the other supervisors, they can be sent to the county clerk. The county clerk has the authority to send it out to the rest of us, but again, don't reply to it. So just so we don't get that quorum or get tripped up in that. So.
Yep, thank you. And the last point on the last slide under this topic, you know, in person, telephone, email, social media, instant message, whatever. Any of those mediums or others that aren't up there, if they're used and that forms the basis of a walking quorum, it's a situation we don't want to get ourselves into. All right, next slide, Lee. So now we get into, still under the open meetings law umbrella, can my committee or board or department hold a private meeting, like in closed session? The answer to that is yes. There are specific statutes that talk about reasons why a body can meet in closed session. And we'll see in a second, the meeting notice that gets published to the public for that meeting has to indicate if there's going to be a closed session at that next meeting. The meeting notice has to provide that, and it needs to appear on the agenda for that next committee meeting. That's the statute reference to, there's like 5 or 6 main exceptions. Next slide. And I've got most of these listed here. So some reasons why your committee will probably end up, or if it needs to talk about under these headings, will meet in closed session are 2. So the first one, deliberate about a trial or hearing to the governmental body. What that means is that if your committee acts as sort of a judicial officer of sorts, like the HR committee does this from time to time, certain matters under our ordinance can be brought before the HR committee in the context of a hearing. And the members of the HR committee are like the hearing officers. Depending upon the nature, the subject matter of what's going on in the hearing, there may be reasons why that should be in closed session. There may be statutory reasons why it has to be in closed session. So that's just one example. Employment matters of public employees is another one, kind of under the same umbrella. That would be an HR committee thing typically. But it could also involve the department that the public employee works for. So it might be, let's say, I won't pick on highway, but that's the first thing that came to mind. So it might be a highway department employee, and so members of the highway committee and department may be part of the HR committee meeting where the HR committee is acting as a hearing officer of sorts. Next slide. Another reason why your committee might want to meet in closed session is so that you can candidly discuss the terms and negotiation of a contract that the county is negotiating but has not yet entered into. The only way, you can talk about those things without disclosing information at a time where it wouldn't be appropriate to disclose the information is to do that in closed session. Because otherwise, remember, the general rule is everything has to be done in open session. But this is another reason why you can talk in closed session about negotiating most contracts. Workers' compensation and unemployment insurance situations also in closed session. The next one is, I was going to say, I didn't think I had a slide, but I do. The next slide is if the committee, the body, has to confer with legal counsel, meaning an attorney, about a matter that either the committee is involved in or the county is involved in, that's another reason why the committee can meet in closed session. The attorney may or may not be there in person, but if they're not there in person, we don't do a Zoom connection. It's a hard line or it's a telephone connection that can be controlled by having the attorney call in to a designated number at the meeting room, and then the committee chair or people assisting the committee chair at the meeting can field the call, bring it in so that the attorney can discuss the matter with the committee. The reason we do that is, and that's pretty typically done around the state, I mean, a lot of times, especially when we have outside lawyers representing us, like in employment cases sometimes, these attorneys are from down in Madison and Milwaukee. We're not going to have them bill us and drive up here, or bill our insurance company and drive 4 hours round trip for a 10 or 15 minute, consultation with the committee. So that's why most times we'll do that by phone. If our office is involved, then we'll most likely be there in person when we have that kind of a closed session. And the last slide, I think, for open meetings law, what happens if it's violated, fines of $25 to $300. These are all things that are discretionary with the court, because what usually happens, and we've never had any of these to my recollection either, but if a person claimed that the open meetings law had been violated, they would probably file an actual lawsuit in Portage County Circuit Court, and then it would get brought before one of our 3 circuit court judges. If the judge found that based on the evidence the open meetings law had been violated, those are the kinds of fines that the court can impose, and the court can impose that on each member of the committee, of the governmental body, or I suppose the court would have the discretion, if the court found that only 3 of the 5 members of a committee somehow violated the law, the court could probably fashion an order imposing fines on just 3 of the 5 people. Knowingly attending meetings that violate the open meetings law is clearly a violation. And second to the last point is important, that if a committee meets and it's the meeting's in violation of the open meetings law and they take action at the meeting, the court can invalidate and void the action that the committee took, which in certain instances could be a big deal, especially if you're talking about unraveling a contract or something like that. It can get pretty darn messy. So it's just a situation that we don't want to get ourselves into, and thankfully we haven't.
Dave?
Yeah.
One other thing that's worth noting when we're in closed session, and I use it as a teaching moment here, we have a lot of new supervisors. If for any reason you're Zooming and joining a meeting, if it goes into closed session, you are not allowed to participate in that closed session. We lose control at that point. So I just wanted to, being we were talking about closed session, I thought it was important to mention it at this time. So.
Yeah, in fact, how we handle that then is we disconnect the Zoom connection at that point so that we can conduct our closed session. And then if that supervisor who was attending via Zoom prior to going into closed session wants to rejoin the meeting, we simply agree with the person ahead of time, okay, we estimate that our closed session is going to take us till 5:45. We'll reestablish the connection with you at that point in time. But then that supervisor who didn't participate in the closed session probably should not vote if the committee is voting on something that happened in closed session, which we always, or almost always, do that, take the votes in open session. The committee who was attending by Zoom but got disconnected for the closed session part of the meeting probably should not vote on the vote that the committee takes in open session.
Some of the history behind that, I believe it was Marathon County that went into closed session and they did not kick everybody out, and they had the media in the closed session. They were on the phone, which was not good. And I was on the finance committee a number of years ago that we were in closed session, and one of the newspaper reporters was sticking a phone recorder through the crack in the door to listen on the meeting. So I think you've seen it all. Something else comes along.
Yep. Last topic, Wisconsin Public Records Law. Next slide, please, Lee. Thanks. So sometimes you'll hear this referred to as the open records law. They're essentially one and the same. Public record is the word that the statute uses, so that's why I used it here. Last point on that slide is that the law and the courts in Wisconsin tend to evaluate public records law questions in favor of releasing and disclosing information that is a public record. So that's kind of the general starting point that the courts follow. Next slide, thanks. So, and a record is defined as, like it says there, any material, written, drawing, recording information, digital recording, including computer records, and probably the biggest one, emails. Emails are public records. Let me say one other thing. As supervisors, I can't think of a situation where you would ever have to be in a position where you'd have to figure out how to respond to a public record request. That's not something that you will ever have to do. However, it's really important to be aware of the concept and, what records are, and be aware of the fact that members of the public, members of the media, doesn't really matter who, people can make requests for public records, and they do it all the time. Even businesses do it. They'll contact a whole slew of counties and say, send me, your vendor list for whatever it is, and they start to comparison shop or whatever. I mean, that's a fairly routine thing. But if somebody were ever to contact you and say, hey, I'm submitting an open records request to you as a supervisor, you can say, well, okay, I'll take it, and I'll probably end up referring it to somebody else who can put together a response. And then you could probably take it to your committee chair. You could take it to the department head who oversees the department of your committee. You could send it to the clerk's office, or you can send it to my office. And then we will work with the department heads to formulate a response to the open records request. Last slide before the end. Emails are public records, like I indicated. When you're communicating about county business, it's really, really, really best to use your county email address, not your personal email address. Part of the reason for that is that if we were to get a public records request and you had sent some emails from your personal email account, and we determined that emails in those communications were in fact a public record, then your personal email account might be on the hook, at least in terms of identifying which messages sent to and from that email account are public records. And again, you don't ever want to go there. I mean, what's yours is yours, so keep it that way. Use your county email account. Lots of times, emails are the subject of open or public record requests, and so my adage that I always tell myself, and I tell pretty much everybody who I talk to, when you're dealing with county business in an email, if you don't want to read about it on the front page of the paper, don't say it in an email. Truly. That's all I've got. Questions? Supervisor Medine.
David, every supervisor sitting here is probably on a committee that a department head reports to for oversight. Could you explain a little bit about the technicality that the committee probably cannot direct that department head to, even by action of the committee, to perform a particular function, because that individual, except with the exception of elected and health officer functions and some of those other technical ones, actually report to the executive, and the executive carries out that responsibility. Could you just give a little bit of a background on that so we know where our limits are as committees?
Sure. The explanation you just gave is a good one. I mean, in the statutes, the county executive statute, which I just happened to be looking at earlier this week, one of the things that it says in there is that the county executive, as the chief executive officer for the county, is the supervisor of department heads in the county. And so when, and the former supervisors on this board will remember, like in January, we had, when department heads retire, we do a search and screen for a new department head. That's largely at the oversight of the county executive. And then you do the interview process. And then when the executive makes a recommendation for hiring a new department head, then that decision comes to the board. So a lot of the county executive's decisions with respect to who department heads are it's a recommendation from the county executive, and then it's typically subject to the approval of the county board. But that's, and what I understand you're asking about, Supervisor Medine, is to what extent, if any, can a committee direct and control what a department head would do? And in general terms, the general rule is that that scenario is not the case, meaning that a committee typically does not direct what a department head can or should do. That's typically, a county executive oversight kind of a thing. Depending on the issue and what's going on operationally within the department, operational things are sometimes a topic that a committee might weigh in on. But generally speaking, big picture, county exec, department heads, that's the organizational chart.
Thank you.
Dave, just some clarification to that, because I'm wondering if they're in a committee and they want to bring a resolution forward, they can direct staff to write the resolution or create the resolution.
Sure. Yeah, they can request assistance from staff. They can have staff, excuse me, write the resolution, because the staff are the subject matter expertise people, and sometimes you need that when you're preparing a resolution for approval. Whenever I work on those, I try to work in tandem with the department heads as well as the committee chair, because we want it to read the way that it should read. And the other thing I always try to put in resolutions is enough history so that if 5 years from now or 10 years from now somebody goes back and reads the resolution, there's enough of a history that you can piece it together fairly quickly, and you don't have to go doing a whole bunch of research that is kind of tedious to come up with. Supervisor Pataki.
I think the new supervisors have to know that although the elected officials are department heads, they only answer to the citizens of the county and not to the county exec.
Right. Yeah, because those are the people who elect those individuals. Sheriff, county clerk, register of deeds, clerk of courts. Treasurer, yeah. Any other questions? Okay, we'll email these out to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Next up, We've got Sheriff Lucas, discussion on meeting safety and meeting schedules.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will just be a couple minutes. Coming up after the committees are set, I'm going to ask for a closed session with the committee chairs so that we can go over meeting security in regards to tactical movement and also what to do if there's a problem in your committee. So I just wanted you to be aware that we are doing that, and since we were approved as security officers starting in May, we have 2 officers that will be a figure that you'll see all the time. Deputy Matt McDonald and Deputy Travis Lewandowski are the 2 that are going to be assigned. I'll be introducing them then to the department heads. Not the department heads, the committee heads, chairs, and then we will have meetings in regards to that. The other thing too is I'm strongly encouraged through the executive ops and also through the county board last year that we would really work on getting our committee meetings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from between 2 in the afternoon to 6 in the evening, and we have all the conference rooms in the annex, so we should be able to accomplish that so that when you're looking at your meeting schedules, let's keep that in mind so that we can keep the security. Last topic is if you're having something contentious on your agenda, please advise me so that I can let our security guys know, or our security officers, you can tell them. But a little advance notice would be helpful for us if there's something contentious on your agenda items. Any questions for me? Yes.
Just a comment, Chair. Maybe it should be chair and vice chair, because if the chair is gone, the vice chair is going to have the same responsibilities then.
And I am good with whatever the county board and the county chair decide in regards to the meeting. It's just that when we're talking about open meetings and closed meetings, that would be a closed meeting for security purposes, for movement in regards to movement of the county board and personnel in that meeting. So that would be something that I would not want out to the public in regards to how we address those incidents.
Supervisor Moresi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Sheriff Lucas. I appreciate you jumping on this and taking it so seriously. My question is about meeting times. We have a number of supervisors here who I have young children, I have a day job. Meeting from 2 to 5 can often be troublesome for me, so that leaves me an hour at the end of the day to schedule our meetings. Is there any flexibility in that kind of meeting schedule that you're proposing right now?
Actually, I built in a buffer. I'm asking for that time frame. But if you're going over to 7 or something, we got a buffer in there.
Yeah, and then also just on that same topic is a lot of the public works during that time period as well, and they're unable to attend during normal business hours. So I just wonder if, how do we continue to be a thriving democracy if we're kind of limiting the hours of showing up to meetings and asking tough questions of our elected officials?
Well, and I did do a lot of research in this in regards to looking at other counties, especially a good example is Wood County, doing their county board meetings, I think at 11 during the day or noon. They're right during the day, looking at their public input, which actually probably has increased compared to a lot of ours. Plus, look at what we have capabilities now in regards to our electronics, in regards to Zoom and capabilities for that, which we never had. So that is another option for a lot of people. And I'm not saying it's the best, but I'm just trying to get something that fits well for each committee, fits well for the safety security of our county boards and the safety and security of all the people that are attending.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Again, that's what this is all designed for, is for everyone to be safe. We've had some instances last year that brought this to the head, and we want to make sure that everybody, both public and ourselves as board members, are safe and we don't get in those positions. So this is a work in progress and something that we've had a few different discussions with staff and we will continue to work on, and it will be open to suggestions, just like we took tonight, because there's the more people we've got looking at it, the better we can create this and have it work out to everybody's safety and to be smooth.
Yeah, and there are some committees that meet out of the annex area. Again, those would be subject for security upon request. not at all times. So that is something to consider also for, Nathan and Highway and some of the others, libraries, if they so choose to be at their buildings. But just understand that our security is designed to be in the annex and to be able to handle the first and second floor and third floor for the meeting rooms. So that is our purpose.
And that's where we have the better capabilities for the remote access for the public too, is both in conference room 5 and 1 and 2.
Yes.
Mike, is public safety going to meet there, or are we going to meet in the law enforcement center?
We have security. We're in public safety.
But just to indicate to the people, there will be an exception to the annex, will be public safety, will be at the law enforcement center.
Correct. Yes. Sure. Stan?
I would think, Mike, that if we had 2 meetings going on at the same time, let's say 4:30, 5 o'clock, and you have your 2 deputies, I mean, you can have one in each one, but they have a radio that if there's any problems in one of those meetings, they can contact the other deputy and work that way.
Yeah, in all realistics, if we have 2 meetings going on, it'll probably be one going back and forth to see if any issues, and they'll be in radio control with our communication center if there's a need be for additional security to come up.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you, Sheriff.
I have a technical amendment here on our agenda. The public notice should have been before number 6 or number 7 and number 8. So if there is no problem, I will read that at this time and jump ahead of our agenda. So, public notice: members of the public who wish to address the county board on specific agenda items must register their requests at this time with such comments subject to reasonable control of the county board chair as set forth in Robert's Rules of Order. We have a list up here. Is there anybody else that has not had an opportunity to sign the list or that would wish to speak? Okay. Confirmation of executive operations appointments and reappointments. Number 7, confirmation of executive operations committees appointments and reappointments. The committee appointments list shall be provided as an addendum on the executive operations committee meeting on April 22nd of 2022. I'll take a motion by Supervisor Splinter, seconded by Supervisor Pataki. Discussion. Do you have to read that resolution? Okay. Discussion. Oop.
I got your attention, didn't I?
Supervisor Honnold.
You want to take public comment?
Okay, are we? I need to understand what we're voting on right now. Are we voting?
No, we're putting it on the floor so I can open it up to the public.
Got it. Thank you,
Okay?
sir.
Yep.
All right. First, we have Eric Olson.
And just to remind everybody in the public that they have 3 minutes, and please direct the comments to the chair.
Sure. Eric Olson, Stevens Point. I watched last week's election of the county board chair and executive ops committee meeting. I watched it online. An overarching theme in discussing the nominees was experience. These are people who've been doing this governing stuff for a long time. And like someone who's fished on the river for many years, not only do they have an idea where the fish are, but they can get you there safely. They know how to avoid the shallow areas and dodge the boulders. Unless you have an unlimited budget for new props, you do want someone with experience at the helm. So congratulations. Here we are at the start of a 2-year term for the county board. And from my vantage and the vantage of many community members, the captain has chosen to aim our boat for a sandbar. This is not an accident. This would be an intentional beaching. Given a choice to appoint board members who actually want to develop and enact strategies that make our community more welcoming, the chair has instead turned off the depth finder and pushed down the throttle. That's his choice to make. You've elected him your chair, but the sandbars are out there and they don't move around very fast. They're hidden under the groundwater of the river. And if things get too shallow, then your meetings become long. It becomes a bit of a slog because you're going to hear from people. There is a moment on the river and don't ask me how I know this, but there's a moment on the river when you get to pull back on the throttle and correct course before you get beached. This is it. This is your first sandbar. It's your call. Thank you.
Lauren Gantz.
Hi, Lauren Gantz, Stevens Point. I'm here to request that the county leadership reconsider its appointments to the Diversity Affairs and Inclusiveness Committee in particular, so that that committee can serve its intended purpose. I'm perplexed by county leadership decision to appoint individuals who have expressed no interest in serving on that committee. Speaking from experience as somebody who does that kind of work, it's very demanding, even when all involved agree on a course of action. And obviously, it is a very contentious time in our county right now. If the committee is to function properly, it requires that all members engage in good faith and be honest about how we need to improve as a county. It also requires a great deal of time, energy, and self-education in order to do that kind of work well. Good intentions aren't enough to tackle those kinds of problems, and half-hearted efforts do more harm than good. I think the citizens of Portage County deserve a functional DAI committee, and they deserve to be represented by supervisors who have a genuine interest in the committee's stated goals. While I find some of the county leadership's appointment decisions perplexing, I am also outright disappointed in others. There are individuals appointed to that committee who have worked for months to obstruct the business of the DAI committee. Those same individuals have proposed countywide changes to diversity training that would cost Portage County federal grants, make us vulnerable to civil rights lawsuits, and impede future diversity and inclusivity efforts. Such appointments suggest that county leadership is bowing to political pressure and working to kill the DAI committee altogether rather than investing in the long-term well-being of our community. That committee is vital to the future of our county. We need to attract new residents and new businesses. We need to keep residents here and slow the brain drain that is siphoning talented, ambitious people out of state. We need to maintain and build upon the cultural vibrance of our community so that young people will choose to make a life here. To accomplish these goals, we need to ensure that Portage County is a welcoming and safe place for all. The creation of the DAI committee was a praiseworthy step in the right direction, and it gives our county a chance to be an example to others statewide. I urge the committee not to squander that opportunity by appointing those who don't want to serve or by actively working to kill the committee. Our citizens deserve this committee, and they deserve to have a committee made up of those who are dedicated to doing the work. Thank you.
Jackie Guthrie.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Guthrie. I'm a resident of Portage County. I rise today to speak in opposition to the proposed appointments to the Diversity Affairs and Inclusiveness Committee. Appointing folks uninterested in doing the work or those who have commented publicly in opposition to the work of the committee is a form of obstruction. While you have the authority to do this, it isn't the act of a collegial, collaborative leader authentically interested in debating the merits of different initiatives. It's locking the door where the meeting might be held so that the conversation cannot take place at all and marching away with the keys. Please appoint the people interested in doing the work of the committee. The community values their mission and work contributions. You might not agree with all of their recommendations. I can appreciate that, but obstructing their efforts by denying them space to collaborate and consider areas for more inclusivity in our government's work is unbecoming. This afternoon, an unanimous approval of the committee's existence, this after a unanimous approval of the committee's existence less than 2 years ago, I implore you to give them space to do the work and to argue the merits of particular work items as they come out of committee. That is our structure. Perhaps you'll be heartened by their merits. I want to live in a place where, regardless of race or sexuality or ability or gender, Our county services are built to meet community member needs. I was heartened at the creation of the committee with that objective from my aging Hmong neighbors who deserve to age in dignity to having desks and restrooms that are accessible to everyone in county buildings. There is so much tangible work to be done and people enthusiastic to do the work. I implore you to appoint them. Their voices need to be heard. They are enthusiastic to do the important, difficult work on this group. Thank you for your consideration of my comments.
The Reverend Jane Johnson.
Hello, I'm Jane Johnson, a member of Portage County. I thank you for offering me this time. Most of the world's religions have many things in common, but one commonality is what we all know is the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Another way to understand this rule is to want for others what you want for yourself. But the only way in our systems, our policies, our laws, and institutions for others who have been marginalized to have what we, who have been the majority, want for ourselves is to give the marginalized a seat at the table. People of color, people of diversity are a big part of what makes this county thrive. They are the heart of our harvest, our manufacturing, and production. They are at the heart of many of our neighborhoods, our restaurants, our schools. As the county board, as the county executive, your role, your job description is to help our county thrive. And a county only thrives and flourishes when all of its people thrive and flourish. All of its people, each and every one. Our county is diverse. That might make you uncomfortable, but it is the truth. Therefore, all the tables, all the rooms, all the boards and committees that make decisions about our county, our community, need to reflect that diversity. The only way to do that is for someone who has historically and customarily held the seats at those tables, so I am talking about white people and particularly white men. Those who have held these seats must get up, step aside, and allow their neighbor of color or other marginalized identity to take their rightful and needed place at those tables. This is what you should do freely and wholeheartedly if you truly do desire the flourishing of this county and not simply have a limited agenda. This is what is required for the common good of all the citizens of Portage County. I urge you to ensure that the Diversity Affairs and Inclusiveness Committee of Portage County has members who actually believe in and support diversity and inclusivity for our county. And I urge you to consider seating Vincent Moresi on that committee. Thank you.
Makira Zarazua.
Makira Zarazua, Stevens Point resident, and I have served on this committee for 2 years. I just want to say, this right here represents why we need a Diversity Affairs and Inclusiveness Committee and why we need representation on it. What Reverend Jane Johnson said is accurate. White people are here and represented very well, but those of us who identify as a person of color, we're not in that same boat. And so when I look across at who we have and who I feel represents me on this body, I look to Vincent Moresi as well. I'm sorry, but he's at least Hispanic. And yes, we point out one little thing to be this makes him part of a minority group. But that means that his lived experiences more closely relate to what mine are, and that he has more of a passion towards making sure that I'm accepted in my community, that I have the right to be here and I'm treated that way. I would also say Supervisor Moresi has been at many of the Diversity Affairs and Inclusiveness committees over the 2 years. The meetings as a participant, as a supporter, as providing guidance. He obviously has some of that background information that we need to support us and lead us through the next 2 years. As a committee, we're a new committee, so we just had gotten started and started going on, what kind of goals do we have? What can we accomplish? And we've been talking about businesses, how do we attract and retain workers, and what role does diversity play in that? And for us to continue this work, it's really helpful to have someone that's already shown dedication to that and wanting to help us prosper. So I ask that you reconsider having Supervisor Moresi added to the Diversity Affairs and Inclusiveness Committee. Thank you.
The Reverend Leo War Grande.
Hello, I am Leo Ware Grande. I'm a resident of Portage County and Stevens Point. I want to speak in support of having a DAI committee that is invested in the work of making our community and the diversity in our community to feel welcome and supported in our community, for the concerns and the particularity of needs for members of the community that are not in the majority to be able to have their voices and concerns brought for appropriate and important consideration by the county. I want my child to grow in a community that values diversity and inclusion, and I also would like to speak to support of Vincent Maressa to be appointed to the DAI committee. Thank you for your time.
Lori Moyer.
Hi, my name is Lori Moyer. I am also a Portage County resident, and I'm here also to speak with regard to the Diversity Affairs and Inclusivity Committee. As of July 1st, 2021, according to census.gov, Portage County was comprised of a citizenry that is 93.8% white, 3.4% Hispanic or Latino, 3.1% Asian, 1% Black or African American, and 0.5% American Indian. I think we can safely say that being white is in and of itself not something that makes one marginalized or underrepresented. So with regard to the Diversity Affairs and Inclusion Committee, it is required that, per ordinance, our county executive is supposed to appoint members that are from marginalized or underrepresented communities. Those requesting to serve on the DA&I committee include Mrs. Honnell, Mr. Moresi, who I will add was awarded UWSP's Diversity and Inclusion Excellence Award for Legislators in 2020. Sorry, this microphone is loud. Mr. Przybylski and Mr. Rockman. And while Mrs. Honnell was appointed, the two other supervisors appointed to the committee, Mr. Soik and Mr. Jankowski, didn't request appointment to the committee, nor do they indicate any experience, training, or education related to diversity and inclusivity programs. It is also worth noting they are not from marginalized or underrepresented communities. So my question is, why are we appointing to the Diversity Affairs and Inclusion Committee supervisors who don't wish to serve on that committee? Would it not be in the best interest of success to appoint supervisors who desire to serve on that committee? Or have we created a committee that we wish to see fail? I would hope not. Given his wealth of knowledge regarding diversity and inclusiveness, his desire to serve on the committee, I respectfully request that Mr. Moresi be appointed to the Diversity Affairs and Inclusion Committee. Thank you.
Mildred Neville.
Just can't stay away.
It's nice to be here to speak to you tonight. Having been here as a supervisor for the last 4 years, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight as a citizen. This board is less diverse than the board the last 2 years. I'm only going to point out 2 ways. One, we've lost a member from the Hmong community, and we've lost 2 overall female members. The Executive Ops Committee itself has also become less diverse. It's now all male, and I think there's a smaller age range as well. I think it's important that the supervisors on the Diversity Affairs and Inclusiveness Committee. There are citizen members, but I think it's particularly important that the supervisors who are appointed to that are people who want to work on that, are people who have some experience and background, and will really enrich that community, that committee, by their service. Joan Honnell was on the committee last 2 years. Don Jankowski and Scott Soik, as already has been mentioned, neither expressed an interest in serving on that committee. That doesn't mean they wouldn't try to do a good job, but they did not, when they had an opportunity to express an interest, put that as an interest. I recommend that those 2 supervisors be replaced with 2 supervisors who did express an interest and who have background experience and other assets for serving on this committee. That's the 2 I'm recommending are Vincent Moresi and Sean Shabilsky. I hope you will ask them tonight to speak for themselves on behalf of their interests to serve on this committee, and then that you will appoint them to serve on the Diversity Affairs and Inclusiveness Committee. Thank you.
Jan Way.
Yes, hi, Jan Wave, Town of Hull. I'm concerned about the future of the Diversity Committee because of who was proposed to make up that committee. I'm hoping that you'll reconsider that committee's makeup at your meeting tonight. Specifically, I would like to see Vincent Morisi be appointed to that committee and to keep Joan Honnell on. As it is set now, it appears to many of us that the current makeup could jeopardize the existence and at least its ability to be of importance. Vinny has a strong interest and he is knowledgeable on the subject of diversity and inclusion and would make sure that the commitment by the county board to form this committee in the first place was respected and upheld. Thank you for all your do and for serving as public officials.
Shannon Semmerling.
Good evening, Shannon Semmerling, Portage County, District 3, and I thank you all for the opportunity for being here this evening to express my interest and concern in the proposed makeup from the Executive Committee recommendations for our Diversity Affairs and Inclusion Committee. As a citizen of Portage County, I have been grateful for the opportunity to come before you as far back as 2018 advocating for this committee, and proudly had the opportunity to also attend each of the monthly meetings, including the Executive Committee meetings that led up to the launch of the first Diversity Affairs and Inclusion Committee. So I come to you from firsthand experience to see the good work that's been happening with the committee, the momentum that has started to build, and the personal commitment of another fellow citizen of mine, Supervisor Morisi, who until recent redistricting was also my district supervisor. So I've had an opportunity to learn through this process as both an engaged citizen, but then also as a representative of Supervisor Morisi's previously, and I appreciate my new supervisor, Lionel Weaver's education and awareness to the fact of who had been proposed for this committee. In reviewing all 24 of your applications, I was really pleased to see that 5 of you expressed interest in this committee. I recall when we were first organizing and determining how to select supervisors for the committee, it was brought up at one of the early Executive Committee meetings. Well, what if nobody wants to serve? Why would we have 3 supervisors on this committee? How are we going to get 3 people to serve? That would be a terrible problem To which I say, it's a wonderful problem today that you have 5 people who want to serve, and yet only one of them was selected to. 2 individuals who were proposed have 0 interest, and it's my understanding that one even offered to step down so that one of the other 4 who are interested in serving could do so. So I ask you to please this evening reconsider the supervisors who've been proposed to serve on this committee. Ensure that they're representative of the work that needs to be done, that they have some personal passion and experience. And in the case of Supervisor Morrissey, even representing much of the work as was shared by some of my other citizens here tonight. I would be greatly disheartened and feel as if my years, even the last 5 here of work in bringing this committee forward, for all of those who don't have the opportunity to speak, the voice to speak, to feel that they no longer are represented nor important in our community. I stand before you a white woman of privilege. I'm educated. I grew up with books in the household in a home full of love. I'm gainfully employed. Every barrier that's placed before me, I have the power to remove because I've started at a different place than many of the people that we try to represent through this committee. So I ask you to please reconsider the appointments and ensure that this committee can continue to move forward and do the good work that's necessary here in our community for those who aren't here at the table, who don't have the voice. And you will see me, whomever the 3 of you are that are fortunate to serve on this committee, in each of the monthly meetings, because I believe the work's important. Your role on that committee is important, as is mine as a neighbor of the individuals that we all share space with and that you represent. With that being said, I do suggest that you please consider Representative Morrissey and take a look inside your hearts if you were one of the other 3 who really, really want to be on this committee tonight, and consider that in your vote when you take a look at the 3 who've been represented. So, thank you.
Fred Kelkofen.
I'm Fred Kelkoven. I live in Stevens. Oops, excuse me. I've lived in this city all my life. I'm proud of it. I like Portage County. Up till a year ago, I wasn't too interested in politics. I thought I was being handled. Now I'm concerned about some things. A year ago, approximately, I started going to these diversity meetings. Well, I'm not impressed. It just, I don't think we got a big problem here. The only problem is a problem people are trying to make. It's going to the meetings. I'll tell you, I was not at all impressed with the meetings, and the last one wasn't any better than several of the others. I pay taxes here. I'm not impressed with the money that the diversity committees cost in the city. It's, in fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Marathon County, they don't have their diversity committee anymore. And I think it's an unnecessary expense, and I'm not one bit for it. If people go to church, I think that covers things. You don't need a diversity committee for that. Thank you.
Just to be clear, we are here to appoint the citizens or the county supervisors to the committees and not to dissolve a committee. So I wanted to make that clear.
Keith Kudrowski.
Keith Kudrowski, Stevens Point.
Member of this community most of my life. Moved out to DC for 30 years. Worked on the Department of State contract for 5 years. Dealt with people of every race, creed, religion, people all over the world. They came to visit us. We treat them with respect. I didn't need anybody to tell me how to treat somebody. If somebody needs to tell you how to treat somebody, you got a problem. So understand we're 93% white community, which if I split it half and half male female means we're 47% white males. Yet people seem to have a problem with the white male, which I am. I checked today, identify as one. You don't want this white male on this board. How is that diverse? Every citizen role on this committee specifically states marginalized, which eliminates me from even putting my name in there. How is that diverse? So it's only diverse when it's your way? Or is it always diverse? And if I remember right, about half of these meetings, if I'm not mistaken, didn't happen in the last year. The majority of them were canceled. I went to virtually every one of them, as did one super who I've heard be called out multiple times, was at those meetings more than I've seen people here who said they were at these meetings be at these meetings. A lot of new people here. Did a great job of drumming them up, Vinny. Anyhow, I'll leave that up to you guys. Just, I'm going to say diverse, 93% white, means 47% white male. If you're going to eliminate them, your committee is a joke because it's not diverse. You took away the diversity. Thank you.
Dave Iden.
Dave Iden, I'm from Stevens Point here. Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. I guess in the efforts of a smaller government and some cost savings and efficiency, I have to wonder if the past members of the Diversity Committee found that committee so important when numerous of the meetings were canceled. That being the case, I know there was a resolution brought forth within the Diversity Committee opposing racism in all of its forms, and it wasn't even debated, let alone addressed. It was left to die. It makes me wonder what the true value of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee is really all about. I feel marginalized as a white male because I shouldn't be included at all. Isn't diversity everybody? Especially maybe some of the largest segments of the audience in our community. Our nation is more diverse than anywhere in the world. Our county and our community is also. I don't see some of the problems that seem to be created with this committee. Personally, my understanding is Human Resources handled these types of situations in the past. The committee seems to be redundant to me. That might be a subject of conversation. Thank you for your time.
That's all that we have that are registered from the public. So now we'll close the public input, and I will put it to the supervisors for discussion. Supervisor Splinter.
Over the last couple of years since we've had this committee put together, I often wondered what diversity in its true sense means. A lot of people tonight have kind of said whether it's a person of color or whether you're white or black or brown or whatever, based on race. And up until 3 years ago, I was just an old white guy. And did I have advantages? Probably yes. But I worked every day of my life since I was 11 years old with the paper route all the way through. So nothing came easy for me either. And 3 years ago, I lost my right leg. And now I feel like I'm kind of in the minority of almost anywhere I go. I can go to grocery stores. I can go to Riverfront Rendezvous with 10,000 people, and I'll never see another person with a prosthesis unless I'm going to a rehab center or something. Then we kind of communicate and we connect. But that's a pretty good minority to be in. I mean, that's a small minority to be in. And none of us, I don't think, got all the committees that we wanted. I got put on a committee that I didn't request, but I'm happy to do that. I look at it as a new opportunity. But I like to just read, I can get it up here, a definition of diversity by the Ferris State University in Michigan, who has a diversity and inclusion committee, and they've been at this for quite a while. And I'm just going to read the diversity definition that they have. Diversity is a range of human differences, including, but not limited to race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, social class, physical ability, or attributes, religious or ethical valuation system, national origin, and political beliefs. So diversity, according to this definition, is not just black and white or brown. It's a diversity of how you think. Do I think this way? Do I think that way? Do I think in the middle? That's a diverse group of people that you want deciding. You don't want everybody thinking one way on a committee because you don't have that diversity of thought. So I would say that something to consider when we're discussing this. But that definition of diversity, I think, includes a lot of different people. Thank you.
Supervisor Gifford.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. You know, I'd like to remove this discussion from the realm of emotion, ideology, passion even, and get to the realm of evidence and fact-based policy making. Now, every few months we get one of these forward analytic reports. It's full of data. And I'm citing 4 different ones that indicate the need for a diversity orientation by this county. We have one called Falling Behind, Migration Changes and the State Workforce. We have one on why millennial generation people are leaving or not coming to Wisconsin, why they're not attracted to it. We have one on the depopulation of many of our rural counties, losing not just workforce, but losing businesses and people, okay? And then there's one called the birth dearth, the demographic crash, I like to call it. There's not enough young workers being born. Okay, so as our counties up north here start to age out, our workforce ages out, I can't think of anything more important for economic development than workforce development, since labor creates all value, right? And where are we going to get the young workforce if they're not being born in adequate numbers up here, north of Highway 21? We are going to look elsewhere. We're going to look to urban areas to the south, you know, Milwaukee, Chicago, Oaxaca, Matamoros, Panama City, wherever the younger generation is still being born. And this generation, I know I've read a lot of stuff about this, so I think I know what I'm talking about. This generation well, two generations, Millennial and Generation Zero, highly value diversity. They highly value respect for other people. And in fact, Generation Zero is 48% made up of persons from communities of color, as the saying goes. So if we want to attract this young workforce to create the value of the future, we're going to have to be appealing to the values and belief system of this two younger generations rather than our own. You know, I'm an old white boomer guy, but I try to understand where the younger generations are coming from. And I think it's a messaging thing, how we want to portray the county to the rest of the country so that people will want to come here, or if they go to the university, they'll want to stay here. And it's just a practical matter in my view. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks.
Supervisor Susan Oakley. Susan Oakley.
Hi. I will just speak a few words here, and I'll make this very brief. And in terms of just validating a somewhat freshman committee, in my opinion, and looking back at some of the history, I have a public health background. In the late 80s, we actually had a cultural diversity committee in this community, and it involved private and nonprofit sectors, public sectors, decision makers came to the table, and we were just looking at many facets that feed into building a healthy and diverse community. So, however this committee continues to take shape, I just think it's important that it maintains a shape and moves forward and just really looks at a meaning of diversity that came up in terms of a variety of opinions and backgrounds and experiences. We've had a couple of years that really created people to pause, and some pauses in a healthier way. So I think this committee, in its essence, could perhaps move us to a healthier way of bridging to all those that live in our community. Thank you. And I should say, and putting folks on the committee that are really excited to serve it.
Anybody else? Supervisor Matt Chakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make an amendment to the original motion to get this on the floor. I'd like to amend it that we pull the diversity, inclusivity and affairs committee, and take that separate. We'll take all the other ones as a vote, and then we can discuss that one separately.
I have a motion to approve the other committees and then separate out the diversity.
Yeah, we would do that right after.
I have second. Seconded by Supervisor Splinter. Discussion? Supervisor Honnold.
If that's the case, then I'd also like to see the Land and Water Committee singled out and discussed after full approval.
Oh boy. How do I take that in an amendment, Dave?
Whether the people that made the amendment are willing to include that.
You have a motion and you have an amendment and a second on the floor. If they wish to do that, they would vote down this amendment. That's how Robert's Rules of Order would take care of that.
All right. An interesting twist, but so we have a motion and a second to accept all the rest of the committees and exclude the Diversity and Inclusive Committee.
Interesting.
If you vote yes, all the other committees are set. If you vote no, that leaves the opportunity for us to have another amendment on the land and water, as another supervisor had indicated. So again, a yes vote is to accept the other committees, and a no vote is to a no vote is not to accept the other committees at this time.
Procedurally, that's not entirely correct, as I understand it. If we vote this down, then they would bring back both committees,
If we vote it down, then all of the committees are on the table.
and then the motion could come back up for the
Then-
two of them to be excluded.
Yes. Correct. Yes. Yes. And does everybody, Supervisor Dubek?
Are we doing 7 and 8 here, or are we doing just
No,
7?
just 7, just the executive ops appointments. That's the only thing that we're on at this time. Supervisor Splinter.
You got me confused now. If I vote yes, that means that we're
All
going
the
to,
other committees are set
all the committees,
that
we're
are
approving,
on
or
the executive.
basically approving the other committees, and we're
As they
leaving
are.
open discussion for the diversity committee. Is
Diversity
that
and
correct?
Inclusiveness, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought you said something else.
Stan, you have a question too?
What happens to Supervisors Hano then? I mean, if she wants to put,
Then she is out. So can I get Supervisor Laddick to close those blinds, please? If the sun is shining, which is a great thing. I don't know if Supervisor Sislevich can get the other ones, but
I was getting the tan.
yeah, I know it's great that we've got the sun, but I can see it's blinding some folks. Everybody, I want to make sure everybody understands what the vote is. Stan, you still look puzzled, but, because I'm going to call a roll. Not, all right, clerk, call a roll.
Could you clarify again the yay, yes, and no vote?
Okay.
Thank you.
So the motion is to accept all of the executive ops appointments except the Diversity and Inclusive Committee. That's all we're voting on at this time. So if you vote yes, that means you agree with all the other committees. And if you vote no, that means you are willing to make changes or corrections. Does that help everybody? Dave, do I got that? Do I have that right? As close as can be?
Yeah, if there's no other questions.
Okay. And the clerk will call the roll.
Supervisor Hakala,
Yes.
Keller,
Aye.
Moresi,
No.
Olkey,
Aye.
Olson,
no.
Rockman.
No.
Stoik is excused. Sislevich,
Yes.
Dodge,
Yes.
Dubek,
No.
Gifford,
No.
Haga,
Yes.
Honnell,
No.
Matt Jakowski,
Yes.
Barry Jakowski,
Yes.
Jankowski,
Yes.
Laddick,
Yes.
Medine,
No.
Morrow,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Pataki,
Aye.
Przbilski,
No.
Rakowski,
Aye.
Splinter,
Aye.
Weaver,
No.
by a vote of 15-9, motion carries.
All right. So now we're back to the diversity question and the committee makeup of that. Supervisor Don Jankowski.
I will withdraw from the committee if I could. I've got enough of a plate there with what I'm doing. And I would like to recommend an individual. I recommend Andrew Rockman. He is the only one that put diversity committee affairs #1 on his list. He also has a degree in governmental ethics and religious studies. So I think that this would give us a good option for that. So that's my recommendation, my vote.
Is that a second by Pataki?
Before I second that, I would just like to make a few comments.
Yeah, I'd rather have a second from someone, then we go on.
All right, I'll second it.
Okay, very good. Discussion. Go ahead, Stan.
All right. Supervisor Hano, who was appointed, her choice was number 5 out of 6. Supervisor Pibilski, his choice was 3 out of 5. Supervisor Moresi, his choice for the Diversity Committee was number 6 out of 7. So that's why I go along with this, the appointment of Mr. Rockman, who put his number 1.
And Supervisor Hano.
I don't recall when I completed that, if I was asked to, were we asked to list those committees in order of importance to us?
I believe it's in the language on the top of it.
It states in order of preference.
Yeah, I think
Order
it
of
states in
preference.
order of preference. I was going to say, I didn't recall word for word, but I thought it was on there in order of preference. So, thank you. Any other discussion on the motion, on the amendment that's on the floor of Supervisor Jankowski stepping down and replacing him with Supervisor Rockman? Supervisor Honnold again.
Who are the other people on the committee?
Right now, after this, it's only the motion to change. There's only 3 supervisors: yourself, Soik, and Jankowski. Jankowski saying he would step down and he would like to appoint Supervisor Rockman. I've got a motion and a second on that. Okay.
Thank you.
Supervisor Pataki.
I had talked with Supervisor Soik about this, and he stated,
We're only dealing with Supervisor Rockman at this time.
okay, but there's some question as to Soik, I think. Mr. Soik told me that he himself went to 8 of
Stan,
these.
I don't think we're having any discussion about Mr. Syke at this time. Mrs. Supervisor Honnold just wanted to know who the other 3 were on at that time. Okay? So again, we're only dealing with Rockman at this time. Supervisor Machakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am a little confused. And maybe it's the air in the back row here, the sun that was in my eyes. I just want to make sure, are we voting just to move one position for now and not voting on the committee as a whole to move it forward? Or does this vote set the committee moving forward?
All that I have is one member opting out and another member being replaced.
So then it
as
would
an
be up for
amendment.
discussion after that?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to, because I
Right.
think that's where some of the confusion was,
Okay.
and I was still confused.
Right. If there's any confusion, and again, we got a bunch of new folks here. We have a resolution before us, or we have a committee that's laid before us, and the makeup is of 3 supervisors. We have one supervisor that was suggested to be on there that is asking to be removed from the list and replace him with Supervisor Rockman. That's all that's going to happen, and then we're back to the original resolution, which, if it passes, would be Mr. Rockman, this is Supervisor Honnold, and Supervisor Soik. If it fails, then it would stay Supervisor Jankowski, Supervisor Soik, and Supervisor Honnold, and then we're back to discussion. All right? Is there any other discussion on Supervisor Weaver?
So, sorry, just to clarify, if this goes and we vote on just this, we can still have additional discussion about the committee. It's not,
It's
okay,
not done.
great.
We're not voting on the makeup of the committee. We're just making a motion on the two members swapping.
Rockman for Jankowski.
That's all we're doing. The rest of it's still on the table. Okay? I know this is a very complicated and very structured meetings, and these are the rules that we have to follow. And believe me, sitting up here and trying to control it is very interesting sometimes, and gets very cumbersome. So, is there any other discussion on the amendment of Supervisor Jankowski for Supervisor Rockman? We have a motion and a second. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now we're back to 3 members on the Diversity and Inclusiveness Committee, which are Supervisor Rockman, Supervisor Honnold, and Supervisor Soik. Discussion, Supervisor Medine.
I'm probably the longest serving member on this county board. I have 5 grandchildren within this community, or very close to it. I would like to see my grandchildren continue to feel strongly about a community that includes those individuals who have sometimes been overlooked. Last year, the county board decided to limit the county-wide training of staff, which could have culminated in Portage County becoming a preferred employer for people who are sometimes overlooked. Discussion on that item should be resurrected, action should be taken, and I think that committee is positioned to be able to do that. It's clear that diverse teams could participate in all aspects of the county and perhaps provide a broader view than homogeneous teams. So I think we should look very clearly about having diverse teams within our employment segment of 700 people. As a result of that, at the risk of alienating my friend Scott Soik, I am moving to have that position, that appointment of Scott Soik, be removed and replaced with Vincent Morassi.
I second that.
We've got a motion and a second to replace Supervisor Soik with Supervisor Morassi. Discussion.
Go ahead, the second.
Supervisor Weaver.
Thank you.
Discussion. Supervisor Weaver.
As I've sat here and listened, first of all, I want to thank the citizens that have shown up to express their views on this subject. We have clergy that have shown up, got a former supervisor, we've got educators, we even have a local elected official who happens to also have served on the committee. As I think about what the makeup of our committees should be, it seems to me that there's a pretty straightforward question that we should be asking ourselves, which is, what's in the best interest of our county? I see themes which have been stated already, which include one's interest, desire to serve, one's qualifications, and I would even add to that one's availability to serve. And what I mean by that is someone can be interested, someone could be highly qualified, but if they don't have the capacity to serve, then I think that would be problematic. I have heard the name Vincent Morassi many times this evening, and I think that there's a reason for it. He no doubt has an interest in it. He was the co-creator of the committee, yet actually hasn't had an opportunity to serve on it. He's undeniably has qualifications. That's a matter of public record that was put in. He's participated in diversity and inclusiveness trainings. He's got an extensive knowledge. He's even been awarded UWSP's Diversity and Inclusion Excellence Award for legislators. I'll also note that he has indicated that he can comfortably serve on 5 committees. And we've already voted to close all of the other committees. It looks to me that Supervisor Morassi is only serving on 3. So he clearly also has the capacity to do it. I strongly would support that we consider the motion that Supervisor Medine has put forth, and that we do substitute in Supervisor Morassi on this committee.
Supervisor Splinter.
I'm a little bit confused. My hearing is not that best. Good hearing either. But Dave, can you let me again restate why you would prefer Vinnie over Scott? I mean, as far as politics, I guess you call politics, which was part of the definition I read. I can't think of two more diverse board members, and everybody pretty well knows that. So, basing it on politics, I think you're getting, with Mr. Soik, you're getting a diverse other side of the story to what almost the rest of the committee and the citizens who came out tonight, which I'm sure gave good support, but I don't, I'm trying to decide exactly why the basis of why Scott wouldn't be a good candidate. Just because he thinks differently or what?
Supervisor Medine.
I'll restate it. The specific reason why.
Your microphone, Dave.
Last year, the county board decided to limit county-wide training of staff, which could have culminated in Portage County becoming a preferred employer for people who are sometimes overlooked. I would like to have the makeup of this committee be supportive of discussion on that item so it could be resurrected and action could be taken to bring that back to this committee. And I think that the makeup that I am made the motion for would be able to do that because we did not have the makeup sufficiently to do that last year.
Supervisor Pataki, you had your hand up.
Yes, sir. Before I vote, I would like to just ask Mr. Murphy one question. There are 7 committees that you requested, and with your expertise and your wanted involvement in the Diversity and Inclusive Affairs Committee, why did you put that number 6 out of number 7, especially when it tells you that you should be picking them according to your preference?
Supervisor Moresi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Supervisor Pataki. That's a very poignant question, and I appreciate it. The first part of this answer is that I currently am already on solid waste, human resources. I was on Ag and Extension at the time, and then I had requested planning and zoning and LawCon because it was a strong interest of mine. I also requested Space and Properties as my 7th, knowing that I full well would not be on that committee, as it has a standing committee that's been there for a long time and they've been doing good work, regardless of my qualifications to be on that committee. The reason I put Diversity and Inclusive Affairs Committee as number 6 is because it was kind of a pie in the sky scenario. I co-created the committee. I requested to be on the committee when it was initially formed, and I was denied. I had at least 2 more conversations with county leadership about being on that committee, and I was denied. I wrote another email explaining my unique characteristics and qualifications to Chair Haga when Supervisor Ande had passed and we were looking to refill that position. And my request was ignored. So I full well knew that I would never be appointed to this committee, sadly. So I wanted to place myself into other positions where I could still continue to do good for the county and its residents. And I thought that perhaps if it was looked at, I could possibly get onto land and water, planning and zoning, which would then put me on 3 other committees that would get me potentially onto the Land and Water Conservation Committee, which is a major concern of how that committee has been governed over the past few terms. I want to be on this committee now, and why I have such a renewed effort is mainly because I know that I can make this committee successful in its goals and its charge. I feel like I have a diverse enough background in how I was raised, where I was raised, and with whom I was raised, that I speak multiple languages or dialects of people who are showing up and participating in this committee from both sides of the aisle. I really want to see this committee succeed, not solely on the basis of race or gender or sexuality or all of the hot button topics right now. Those are all part of this, and I believe in their representation deeply. But I see this as an opportunity for Portage County to step forward to attract and retain a very diverse workforce for the 21st century and beyond. If we're able to do this, we positioned ourselves in this county very uniquely. We have a university system that attracts a lot of young people to our community. And as soon as they're done, they're out of here. I was one of them. I left. I didn't see a place for me. I boomeranged back when I came back for a wedding for some of my best friends, and I realized that this is my community. And I saw that diversity, and I saw the exceptional motivation and entrepreneurship in this community and what it has to offer. And I knew that we could thrive here. A lot of students don't think that. I've traveled all over the place, and everywhere I go, there's somebody from UWSP or from Wisconsin that I meet. And they're all proud of our state, but they all end up living somewhere else. And I'd like to stop exporting our best and brightest in academia and the trades and in farming and agriculture. My brother-in-law, one of them, left Wisconsin to go to Maine where he could successfully be an organic farmer when organic farming wasn't even on the radar. And he left because he couldn't really do that here. He couldn't find the support systems to do that here. And I'd love to have him here. He's my best friend, you know. But my main thing is to create a community here for people who are less abled or disabled, for people who have hearing and speech impediments, for friends and family who have autistic children or children with special needs, to keep people in our community and prevent the drain of qualified contributing members of our community from leaving. We really need to consider this, and I'm hoping that I can be a part of that by leading this committee, not to create some sort of agenda or do something that's radical, but merely to create an inviting environment where all voices are represented and heard and considered, whether I agree with them or not. And I think members in the audience would be very surprised by how I would conduct myself while leading this committee, assuming that I get placed on it and assuming that I can be part of the team that creates this space. So long story short, Mr. Pataki, I didn't think I would ever get on this committee because I was denied 4 times by our leadership, and it hurts. It wasn't surprising, but I was willing to step aside so others could represent, and I feel like we did have very good leadership on that committee. However, we had some other troubles that we talked about at Exec Ops that prevented it from being successful. So thank you.
Supervisor Bob Gifford.
Yeah, briefly in support of Supervisor Medin's motion, I would just say that I'm in favor of Supervisor Moresi being on there because, as I mentioned, I think this committee has high strategic importance for our county, and there's a lot more that it could be doing that I think Supervisor Moresi would be pushing it forward to do. So that's just, I didn't indicate that as a committee preference because frankly, I thought that that Vinnie was a lock for it, but I didn't know all the behind the scenes things because 2 of the supervisors had lapsed off the board. So anyway, I'm in favor.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Laddick.
I'd just like to ask, thank you, Supervisor Moresi, lofty goals.
Use your mic, please.
Oh, just like to ask Supervisor Moresi, lofty goals, very commendable, but what action can you actually really 100% take, and how would you measure it?
Right. Well, we have a couple of, I have the actual ordinance here. And number 1 says we're supposed to enlist the cooperation of agencies, organizations, individuals in the community to promote awareness and appreciation of diversity and inclusiveness.
Closer to your mic.
I'm sorry, thank you. What I see happening here is a cross-pollination of organizations and ideas within our community. So it'd be engaging. I believe former Supervisor Johnson tried to do this before things started to get a little dicey in that committee and obstructed, but she wanted to bring in business leaders into our community, from our community into the committee and discuss what their greatest workforce challenges were and how we can support them in that. Because I really believe this is a huge workforce development issue. Number 2 says it's evaluating Portage County policies for bias and make recommendations to reduce bias and create more inclusiveness. Well, part of this is evaluating HR policies and our budget and how we are allocating our money to either certain programs or policy training, things like that. I'm already doing that on the HR committee. It would be a logical tie-in to have someone from HR and diversity and inclusion to be working hand in hand so we're not siloing our committees, right? And we do that a lot with finance and HR, or finance and space and properties. We sit down all together, we have a good productive discussion about what we're going to do, and we make it happen. So it's the same with D&I and the HR policies and potential budgetary policy. That's not the highest priority, is the budgetary policy. I think we can find ways to do this work and take that baby steps at a time. We also have number 3, recommend strategies to improve Portage County's capacity to attract and retain people from groups that are either marginalized or underrepresented in central Wisconsin. Again, that's another workforce development issue. It's also a keeping our community strong issue. I want my kids to go away to school or trade school or whatever they want to do, travel the world, and ultimately I want them to come back here. Why? Because they have something to live for here. They have a thriving community and environment that is welcoming, and they want to return to live here. They want to see the arts. They want to see a thriving trade school here that is the top in the state, that is creating jobs in our community, to be a leader in our in central Wisconsin. Number 4 is promote equitable and fair access to public services. Again, this is something that we can evaluate with department heads to stay out of our silos. The committee is comprised of a number of people from very diverse backgrounds, from their age, gender, color, race, religion, to also where they work in our community and what they're doing. We have a social worker. We have a person who is an EMT and a medical profession who also leads discussions on having difficult discussions. He's an advocate for this type of work. We also have 2 supervisors that have a very different perspective. Supervisor Honnell is hearing impaired. I want her voice represented on this, so how we can make our services better for all the people who live in this community. Number 5 is develop strategies to address the public health issue related to discrimination, oppression, and racism. And I think this is the one that people probably latch onto the most. We've seen a tumultuous couple of years here, but it's been a lot longer than that. We want to have these discussions in our committee, and hopefully we can have them on the county board floor to create an environment that is fair and equitable to all. It's not meant to make anybody uncomfortable. It's not meant to push ideas into anybody's minds about how they should feel about themselves. It's about empowering ourselves as supervisors to be inspirational leaders for our community, which I know you do, because by how you conduct yourself in all your meetings. I mean, people throw stuff at you all the time, me included, and you are still cool and calm and collected and kind, and we should all be like Dave Laddick because of that. I'm serious. I respect you so much for that. And I think we can do that as a county board of supervisors if we take the time to just put in a little bit of effort to understand where marginalized people are coming from, to understand, to walk a mile in the shoes of a person who is unrepresented. And that might mean that you have a disability. You might be a person of color. You could be a woman. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I just know that it's a whole hell of a lot harder than being me, right? I see my wife go through that, and other women go through that when they're paid 88 cents on the dollar to what I can make or what you can make. The goal here is to be good neighbors and good citizens. And if I can help that by being a member of this committee, I would be absolutely honored and humbled. And I am like literally shaking right now, and because I am so humbled by the kind words that the community has bestowed upon me. I don't even know how to react to it. I'm so blown away by their generosity. So thank you.
Supervisor Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make one comment. It really doesn't have a lot to do with whether or not we appoint Supervisor Morrissey or not. But he and a couple citizens tonight talked about the people of our county getting educated and leaving. I'm a furniture salesperson, and I meet new people every day, every week, every month. I meet people all the time that are moving here from somewhere else, and I meet people all the time that married sometime after they graduated and still live in Stevens Point. We have people leaving and we have people coming. We can't build houses fast enough. We can't build apartment buildings fast enough. We're growing. We have industry in our county that is growing. We have new industry and we have expanding businesses. It's normal for the young person to want to spread their wings, graduate school, and go see the world. I get to meet the ones that have moved back, and that is many. This is a great place to live. We keep talking about it as if we've got some major problem here. I meet people all the time, and I have never heard one complain about how they've been treated. So I think it's something we need to keep a perspective on, just how involved or how invested we have to get emotionally in solving a problem that isn't there. Thank you.
Supervisor Peterson.
I might be out of place here, but I was wondering, some of these other commissions have, 3, 4 on. Why couldn't this one have 4? Or am I out of place on that?
That's not part of the discussion, but it was created, and I'll get into that later about the creation of it.
Then the other thing I have is we hire, Hispanics or, minorities. And when they come from these other countries into these communities, they have a distrust of the people. It's, and once you win their trust, they will
invite in you. But the way they were treated in these other countries, it's hard. But once you win their trust, why then they explain how they were treated in these other countries. So, I mean, it's this diversity thing is, it's a hard job. It's tough to reach out to these people because of their distrust of just other people in general.
Supervisor Sislavich.
So a lot of good discussion here today. A couple of things I picked out from this. As Supervisor Splinter noted that diversity is not race or color. It's how you see things, no matter who you are. And in Vinnie Maurice's last comment, he states that he does not want this committee to be based on race or color. Some of his supporters noted that he is of different ethnicity, without what I would say that, in his support for him to be on it because of his. As far as committees go, I wanted to be on 6. I got on 1 of the 6. The other 2, I'm happy to be a part of. I'm going to work my butt off to make sure that those committees are ran great. Vinny got his first 2 that he supported on, but that's here or there. But my only concern is that Supervisor Soik is not here to defend himself on why he should or should not be on that and what his feelings are. So I don't think it's fair to be making a vote without Supervisor Soik here to defend himself.
So just so everybody understands, Supervisor Soik's not here tonight. He's in Las Vegas supporting his son, who is there for a Roman Greco wrestling competition. So
Great.
Go. Yep, and we all wish him luck. He's representing us back home here, so good luck to him, to his son. Supervisor Honnold.
I'll make this short. I don't believe that Supervisor Moressi's ethnicity, as much as it's his experiences in life, that he can bring to that committee. And we're not looking for a token Hispanic person. What we're looking for is the kind of experience that is not present on this board. How many people in this room have ever been on welfare? How many people in this room have ever been on AFDC? Great. How many people, and I, with all due respect, Supervisor, people who come into furniture stores have money to buy furniture. Have you tried to rent an apartment in this community? We have no housing for people who can't afford $600, $800, $900 a month to rent an apartment. Yeah, you don't see those people coming into furniture stores, that's true. But there's a whole underserved group of people in our community who are struggling, and they're not in this room. Excuse me, not now. And with that, I'll end.
Any other discussion, comments? So a couple comments have been made. One about the makeup of this board, that we don't have enough diversity in it. And I hear this being on the board 20 years. I hear it comes up more and more. We are all elected by the public. We have nothing to do with the makeup of this board. So, or the number of women that are on it. This is by elected position. So there's not a lot other than people that want to raise their hand and say, I want to run for these positions, that we can do about this. And then it has to be elected by the public. Another thing is, I remember one of the comments made by one of the clergy that says, give them a seat at the table. All of the people. Everybody. Okay? Supervisor Peterson asked about the makeup of this committee, and when I look back at it, we had Supervisor Johnson, Supervisor Moresi, and Supervisor Mua talk about the creation or having a diversity and inclusiveness committee. And when the exec and I sat in my office talking about it, talking about the makeup, talking about the resolution, talking about the criteria for the positions, we came up with the idea that there should be 3 supervisors on it at large, because probably for the facts that have been stated, we don't have a lot of diversity on our board, and that's not by our choice. And the diversity and inclusiveness and underrepresented is in the 4 people that are appointed by the executive from the public. And they hold the majority vote. That is by design on that committee. So the component, the big part of it, of the diversity and the rest of it we're talking about, lies in the majority, which are the appointed citizen members, and it calls it out for it in their position selection. And I have it in my my notes here. So the committee is called Diversity Affairs and Inclusive Committee. That is exactly what I tried to do with the appointment to this committee. I have had complaints from supervisors and public about not being able to speak at our Diversity Affairs and Inclusive Committee, including myself. I was told that this was needed to be done because the citizens were unruly and disruptive. I believe that the people that were attending these meetings wanted to talk, ask questions, and get answers. When that didn't happen, they were frustrated. Now, this made some of the committee members feel unsafe. Now we have a divide with the public and the committee. This is not good. As Executive Holman and I sat in my office talking about the creation of this committee, the member makeup, the resolution wording, and the creation of each member, we came up with these suggestions that were later adopted by the county board. There was to be no criteria for the 3 supervisors appointed by the board chair. They are at large. The 4 citizens that are appointed by the county executive are to be the marginalized and underrepresented community members of Portage County. If fewer than 4 citizens meet these criteria, apply to serve, then up to 4 members who work directly with marginalized and underrepresented communities in Portage County may be selected to serve. That group has the majority vote on the committee by design. The minority vote is in the board supervisor vote by design. To silence and not allow others to speak or ask questions of anyone that thinks differently should not be allowed. If you truly believe in diversity and inclusiveness, everyone gets to speak, even if you don't agree with them. We are elected by the people for the people, and that means all of the people, not just the ones we agree with all of the time. In my role, I have the responsibility of all of Portage County. That means everyone, even if they disagree with me or don't share the same viewpoints. I'll stand up for their rights and speak and share their viewpoints. We've talked about this committee makeups, and I don't think a lot of people understand what's all involved in this. And this year we had a really accelerated timeline to get this done in time and meet all the deadlines. So when I was appointed to the chair on the 19th that evening, the next day we had to start sitting down and looking at these committees, and we had to meet with the new county executive to talk about his appointments. I asked for the first vice chair to sit in. I also wanted somebody else to be able to be in there to see what's all involved in this, because it is quite daunting to be able to put these people together. One of the things that a lot of you don't understand is that we talked about this walking quorum of 3. We have roughly 32 committees. Of these 32 committees, we have 24 supervisors because the county board chair is not on any of these committees, so there are 24. We have to make sure that we don't have any 3 members on any 2 committees. That means if we have 3 members on finance, we can't have the same 3 members on parks. If they were to talk about something that had money in parks, then it's a walking quorum because they're going to talk about it and vote on it in finance. This creates quite a problem when you try and put this puzzle together. So when we have 9 new supervisors, that means you take that puzzle box and you dump it on the ground. For the most part, a lot of the supervisors stayed where they were. The new supervisors Some of them got their committees, some of them didn't. Some of them would ask for finance or someone, you know, and it's like, these are some big committees. We'll try and feather some in there. But some of these committees are left for the seniors, and then we feather the rest in there and backfill them where we can. We were literally, had my office door open, hollering back and forth to Lee, how does this work? Nope, that creates 3 quorums. Well, what if we change this person and this person? We went back and forth, and I don't know how many hours we were sitting there because we had to get it done, because we had to get the agendas out for executive ops. So when you talk about the committees, I got this committee and I got that committee. I wished everybody could get all the committees they want, believe me. But it's not an easy task. And when you try and put them together and you try putting people in where their strengths are, that's why I had asked the first vice chair to sit in there, because to get another set of eyes, another point of view is great. I can't talk to anybody else other than the vice chair because now we got a quorum. So it is a daunting task, and if somebody didn't get something they wanted, just hang in there. Everybody, you're all valued, but we've got to try and figure out what works to be able to put this puzzle together. I think I've covered everything. Anybody else have any other discussion or comments? So we have an amendment on the floor to swap out Supervisor Soik for Supervisor Moresi. And it's amendment. This is just the one for one. We're not voting on the whole committee. And there's no other discussion. The clerk will call the roll.
Supervisor Barry Chakowski.
No.
Supervisor Sislevich.
No.
Dodge.
No.
Dubeck.
Aye.
Gifford.
Aye.
Haga.
No.
Hakala.
Aye.
Hanel.
Aye.
Jankowski.
No.
Keller.
No.
Laddick.
No.
Matt Chakowski.
No.
Badine.
Aye.
Moresi.
Aye.
Morrow. Olkey.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Peterson.
No.
Pataki.
Nay.
Brzezbilski.
Aye.
Rakowski.
Aye.
Rockman.
Aye.
Splinter.
No.
Weaver.
Aye.
By a vote of 13 ayes, 11 nays, 1 excuse, the motion carries.
So now back to the original resolution. We've got Supervisor Rockman, Supervisor Hanel, and Supervisor Moresi.
Correct.
Those are the 3 citizens.
Supervisor.
So I'm sorry. 3 supervisors that are on this committee.
It's 7:25.
So we're not done.
Yeah, we're a long way.
So I have, this is a separate motion. This is now back to the approval of this committee. Because we approved the other one, we have to approve this one with that makeup. And the clerk will call the roll.
Supervisor Moresi.
Aye.
Dubeck.
Aye.
Weaver.
Aye.
Badine.
Aye.
Morrow. Brzezbilski.
Aye.
Laddick.
Aye.
Hanel.
Aye.
Rockman.
Aye.
Gifford.
Aye.
Pataki.
Aye.
Splinter.
Aye.
Keller.
Aye.
Jankowski.
Aye.
Haga.
No.
Olson.
Aye.
Olkey.
Aye.
Rakowski.
Aye.
Soik is excused. Hakala.
Aye.
Dodge.
Aye.
Matt Chakowski. Aye. Barry Jakowski.
Aye.
Sislevich.
Aye.
Peterson.
Aye.
By a vote of 23 in favor, 1 against, 1 excused, motion carries.
On to the next. As we confirmation of county executive appointment and reappointment. I'll take a motion. Motion by Supervisor Dubek, seconded by Supervisor Jankowski. Discussion. No discussion? Come on. Supervisor Jankowski.
I did note that there are some spots that are open and you're still working on those, I take it then, right, John?
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, just 2 from the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, actually all 4. I got 2 kind of selected. I have to let them know. But I am actually taking applications still for that. And because of the whole discussion of what's all been taking place the past week, I want to make sure I put the right people on that committee and make sure I understand how that all works. It does have a quorum, so it can still meet and make decisions if it wants to. We still have time to get those right 2 people, and I need to do some research. I see some people who are actually out in the audience I need to talk to. That's what's going on. If you got any questions, let me know. And I'm looking for all your input.
Thank you.
There's some other blanks on the other one, but they are committee members that need to be from certain committees. I believe there was a couple of them from finance. This was going back to the last one. And I think some of them by statute, they're supposed to be appointed by finance into those positions, or I was going to relinquish that and let the finance committee appoint those people to some of those committees. So we'll probably have a few others trickling in at the next county board as well. So, all right. If there's no other discussion, we have a motion and second with the county exec's appointments. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 9, approving a 1-year extension of the Animal Control Services Agreement between Portage County and the Humane Society of Portage County, Inc., effective January 1st, 2022 through December 31st of 2022.
Resolution number 7, 2022-2024, submitted by the Public Safety Emergency Management Committee. This resolution ratifies and approves the renewal/extension of the service memorandum of agreement between Portage County and the Humane Society of Portage County for animal control services for calendar year 2022.
So motion by Supervisor Pataki, seconded by Supervisor Jankowski. Discussion. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Authorizing the conveyance of an excess remediate parcel of property on Martin Island Drive to Consolidated Water Power Company.
Resolution number 8, 2022-2024, submitted by the Space and Properties Committee. This resolution authorizes the county executive officials and staff to dispose of an excess remnant parcel on Martin Island Drive in the town of Carson by conveying it to the adjoining landowner, Consolidated Water Power Company.
Motion by Supervisor Dodge, seconded by Supervisor Medine. Discussion. Supervisor Moresi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. Is there any money transfer here? Should they be buying this from us, or are we just giving it to them so they start paying taxes?
Is this extra? Is this extra test territory?
No, it's more of a headache to us than anything, so we are happy to get rid of it. It eliminates a lot of liability or potential liability for the county because it lies along the river there, and they're the owner of the areas of the river next to it. At least I think that's to the east. I'm pretty sure the way the road runs there. There's also the question, you can see part of the parcel includes a tiny little strip of land next to the town road there. And what a lot of the homeowners do there is attempt to have docks and various moorings for pontoon boats and whatnot. And because it's our property, we'd really rather not be in the business of having to, have those kinds of arrangements with people from year to year. You also get involved with, things like restrictions from the state with shoreline zoning and all of that kind of stuff. And this is, what the paper mill company is basically in the business of doing, and they have lots of other parcels like this. So when we approached them about it and they said yes, we thought it was a good idea.
And they will start to pay taxes on that chunk of land to Portage County taxes?
To utility?
I'm sorry?
Does utility pay taxes? So will we see any future income from this at all?
I don't know the answer to that if it's something that's held in public trust because it's a waterway, and I apologize that I don't know offhand.
That's okay. I just trying to figure it all out. Thank you very much.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Barry Jakowski.
I'm just wondering, and maybe David Ray could answer this question, or maybe somebody from Space and Properties. Why didn't we convey it to the property owners across the way that may be able to have a dock or a mooring? Or if we're going to give it away, why don't we give it away to people who are going to pay taxes?
I think go ahead, Dave.
There's a road separating that.
Oh, there's a lot of waterfront properties that have their access to the waterways across the road. Just seems to me if we're going to give a piece of property away, we should give it away to people who pay taxes in Portage County. And maybe could access a very unique waterway because of it.
They'll still be able to access the water.
Yeah, but if they're going to have to rent from Consolidated Water and Power, maybe come up with an agreement, or maybe Water and Power says we had too much trouble with it, we're never going to do that again. And these people won't have the opportunity.
Supervisor Jankowski or Supervisor Medine, do you have anything to add to this? Or I guess my questions are too, is then who pays for the survey of all of these? Because there are several properties along there.
I think the 4-rod right-of-way of that township road goes all the way out to into the waterway, that waterway that currently exists. Obviously, this shoreline was not there before the 1930s when the last level of the river was raised, and took all of these properties that Consolidated has water rights to, essentially underwater. Still private property, it's just that Consolidated Water and Power has the water rights to it, and making them the deciding entity in this whole process.
I don't see Dave on line any longer, is he?
No, I don't either, and I know he's the person from my office that worked with the committee on this. I mean, if we'd like answers to those questions, we could put this off and bring it back.
Is there any timeline anybody know about that anything is?
I don't believe there's a timeline. He was just trying to clean up what we have here.
Right.
Supervisor Barry Jakowski.
Mr. Chair, I would make the motion that we postpone this till we have a chance to talk with the property owners across the way and see what type of situation that may create for them and maybe for us.
I got a motion by Supervisor Barry Jakowski, seconded by Supervisor Splinter. Any other discussion to postpone? Supervisor Matt Jakowski.
I just have one further discussion point when this goes back to committee, and I guess I do sit on Space and Properties now, so it may change at that point in time. The only thing I consider when looking at this, we're giving it to Consolidated Water and Paper, in which at this point in time we don't know whether or not they pay taxes or not, property taxes or not. But if we would convey this to the people that are across the road from it, it not only raises their taxes because now they own waterfront property, it also raises their taxes because it values the property across the road that much higher. Mm-hmm. So those are some things to consider when we bring it back, and I'm sure there will be lengthy discussions at Space and Properties.
Most of the people from Space and Properties are here, so they heard that. Supervisor Maresi.
On that same note, we have to ask them if they even want it. right? Because that's part of that is like, hey, do you want this? And here you're going to pay this much in taxes and your house value is going to go up. So I think it does warrant some discussion. And I do like the idea of if they do want it, which maybe the majority will, we do get tax dollars into the county, which we are screaming for right now. We do need them to provide the services that we provide. So thank you, Supervisor Jakowski's, for bringing those points.
What do we do? What do we do if half of them want it and half of them don't? So it's all right. We'll see. We'll see what the committee brings back. Supervisor Medina.
I will vote for it, but you can see the 4-rod right-of-way on the parcels to the last parcel to the north extends all the way out into the water. So that if we gave ownership to a private entity in a town road right-of-way, we could have a mess. So we can look at it as a Space and Properties Committee, but it looks like we'll be coming back with the same resolution next month.
Depending on how good those lines are, you look to the south, it looks like it's wider as well, and this jogs in on both ends. So you talk about road right-of-way and stuff. Supervisor Barry Jakowski.
I have a lot of property that there's right-of-ways through, and for one reason or another, I've kept all those right-of-ways.
Supervisor Splinter, then Supervisor Dodd.
Yeah, if we go ahead with this, bringing it back to Space and Properties, I would hope that we extend formal invitations to all the potential future owners of it, so that they have a say at that meeting. If they all show up and they say, I don't want it with a 10-foot pole, well, then that decides that. Right. But if they all want it, that decides it the other way. And if it's half and half, then maybe the majority will win.
Yep. Let's see what the committee brings back. Yeah, they should be asking or talking to them. I would have thought too, sometimes when there's land acquisitions or zoning requests, anything that's abutting gets noticed or notified, but maybe because the road was there, it wasn't abutting. I don't know.
Without Dave here to comment, that may have already been addressed, so we'll find out.
We'll find out. Well, so the motion is to...
Dave's back.
Oh, Dave Hickeford's back on.
He just logged back in.
Mr. Chairman, we have 2 motions on the floor. I will withdraw my motion to approve.
Yeah.
The motion was to, oh, I'm sorry. The motion was to approve this, to get it on the floor. So you will withdraw your motion to approve. Who seconded it? Medine, Supervisor Medine seconded the motion to get, you will withdraw that?
Yes.
Okay. So now the motion on the floor that we have is to postpone it, and that was a motion by Supervisor Barry Jakowski and seconded by Supervisor Splinter, correct?
Our attorney is on now.
Supervisor, Mr. Hickeford.
Something I can help with?
Can you speak up a little bit, or?
Or is there something I can help with?
Well, I don't know if, I really don't know if it's pertinent right now because it's not really an agenda item. We were going to sell this parcel, but I would just assume we're sending it back to the committee to look at this consolidated land. Was it ever asked of the people that are abutting or across the road if they were interested in the parcels that you know of?
Many times in the past, and there's been no appetite for that.
Well, that answers that, folks.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, this has actually been.
Mr. Chair, maybe I should withdraw my motion.
Supervisor Keller.
okay, I want a quick question only to ask. Was it presented to them to purchase, or was it presented them to receive it as a gift?
Good question.
Well, so the issue with that is that the government cannot gift property to private individuals. So there has been ongoing conversation. There had been for years conversations to sell the property to one of the main landowners, but that fell through. That never happened, and there was no appetite for that after that. So there was some discussions on that years ago. It never went anywhere, and it fell apart. And it was only really one interested party. Nobody else was ever interested. It was discussed. It was asked, and it was answered. There's no appetite. And primarily it is that there's really not much land there, frankly. Much of it's underwater. There's just a sliver of land between the roadway and the water.
So is there any other questions for Council Hickford. So we have a motion on the floor to postpone it and send it back to committee. Supervisor Barry Jakowski.
If that question has been answered, that was the only question we were going to ask. I guess I should withdraw my motion. And second of all, I would like to apologize to Supervisor Dodge for trying to supersede her motion.
So who said, it was Splinter?
I'll make that motion.
Hang on, hold on. We got to back it up. There's what we were looking for. Taking up Supervisor Splinter's second has been withdrawn. So now we have no motions on the floor. I will accept a motion. Motion by Dodge, seconded by Jankowski. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I didn't want to redo that.
Motion carries. Thank you.
It's probably consent.
Now we're getting to the stuff that Nate has been waiting for quite some time. Authorizing a contract of services for polymer overlay on bridge decks.
Resolution number 9, 2022-2024, submitted by the Highway Committee. This resolution ratifies, approves, and authorizes the specified contract for polymer overlays for bridge decks.
Motion by Supervisor Laddick, seconded by Supervisor Matt Jakowski. Discussion. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. For all of you folks that do not know, the gentleman sitting up here is Nathan Check, our Highway Commissioner. So you guys, we got a lot of new members, so I just want to take the opportunity to point out who he is. So if you see him, you know who he is. Number 12, revision of Portage County Ordinance 2.13.1, establishing speed zones.
Resolution number 10, 2022-2024, submitted by the Highway Committee. This resolution amends Portage County Ordinance 2.13.1, resulting in the establishment of specified speed zones for County Trunk Highway PP in the town of Linwood.
Take a motion and get it on the floor. Motion by Supervisor Matt Jakowski, seconded by Supervisor Pataki. Discussion. Supervisor Matt Jakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to offer an amendment to this. Now, under the now therefore be it resolved, the first dash, County Trunk Highway PP, Town of Linwood, it says 45 miles an hour. I'd like to amend that to 50 miles per hour from the Wood County line easterly to 900 feet northwest of Mill Creek Road. The second dash, County Trunk PP, Highway PP, Town of Linwood, from 40 miles an hour to 45 miles an hour from 900 feet northwest of Mill Creek Road, easterly to State Highway 66. The reason for my, I guess I'll ask for a second and then.
Seconded by Supervisor Laddick.
The reason I asked for this amendment is because we hired Traffic Analysis and Design, Inc., also known as TADI, to do a speed study on this section of highway. When TADI came back with the speeds for that section of highway, they suggested 50 miles per hour, or their study, I should say, came up with 50 miles per hour and 45 miles per hour. It was set on the committee at 45 and 40, which after talking to Commissioner Check a little more about it, when we do a speed study, they look at many different factors, including the elevation of the road, crash history. They go out there, do a traffic count. They take the speeds of the vehicle. They talk about the 85th percentile. I will let Commissioner Check explain the 85th percentile. I could do it, but you may not understand me. He does an excellent job of it. The 85th percentile on that road for the part that was 45 miles an hour was actually 58.7 or up there miles per hour. So, and I guess Commissioner Check is a professional engineer. He can explain it much better than I can. After the meeting, he took some time to explain it to me. I had more information. I guess I should have called on him during the meeting a little more. It's my fault as chair not doing that. I will swallow the sword on that one, but I would like him to explain why I made this amendment.
While he's coming up here, our Crack County, our deputy clerk pointed out to me that on the next page in red, number U or letter U and V, you probably need to make an amendment to those as well because they address the speed. So, well, I'll look for that as soon as we're done. Thank you.
All right, thank you,
Check.
Chair Hagan. Welcome, new supervisors. As former Highway Committee Chair Jakowski mentioned, one of the biggest factors in conducting these speed studies is the 85th percentile speed, and that's the speed that 85% of traffic is going at or under. That typically is the safe travel speed that people feel comfortable driving on that section of roadway. And for the two segments that were mentioned, they averaged 58 miles an hour for the western segment, segment 1, and then 46 miles an hour. And the traffic speed guidelines strongly recommend that you place your speed limit within 5 miles of that 85th percentile, because that's the speed most people are going on that roadway to begin with. So when the recommendation came out from the committee at 45, we're looking at a 14-mile-an-hour speed differential on that roadway, which is going to cause just as many issues as you're trying to resolve. So staff did support TADI's recommendation of the 50 miles an hour for segment 1 and 45 for segment 2, as Supervisor Jakowski amended.
What's the speed limit now on 1 and 2?
Currently, 55 miles an hour. Statutorily, all county roads are set at 55 miles an hour. They are able to be reduced with a speed study justifying those reductions.
Supervisor Moresi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Check. I appreciate you having the study done because it was quite a meeting that we had which started this whole thing. On that note, is this kind of the done deal, the speed changes, but is the policy for the tree removal still the same? Like, are you still going to conduct the tree removal as prescribed?
Is it affected at all by these changes, the tree removal aspect of it?
No.
So the speed ordinance is separate from any sort of maintenance activities. As part of the motion, though, from Highway Committee, they did approve a reduced clear zone along this entire stretch, 10 and 12 feet, depending on the segment.
Thank you. I really appreciate your efforts in all of this and being open to the discussion. It was great to hear from the community from both angles. Thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Check? Supervisor Dodge.
I was at your last Highway Committee meeting for most of it, and there were a lot of locals present. And it seemed to me that they were requesting the lower mileage. So have you somehow informed them that we've now increased it 5 miles per hour?
This is the first action taken on it. So there was copies of the speed study, though, included in the Highway Committee packet, and my staff memo to the Highway Committee did have the 50 and 45 mile an hour recommendation.
Okay. So that won't be a shock.
Never know. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
It's understood that the motion includes the language on the second page also.
No, haven't got to that yet.
Not understood.
I would include that in my amendment. The language on the second page also be changed from 45 to 50 and from 40 to 45.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Laddick is seconding that. Okay. So now we have an amendment to change the speed limits from 45 to 50 and 40 to 45. That is just the amendment. Okay, so we're not dealing on the whole resolution, just those corrections. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Amendment carries. Back to the original resolution as amended. Any other discussion? All those in favor with the resolution as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Last one, folks. Number 13, authorizing a 2022 budget amendments and transfers.
Resolution number 11, 2022-2024, submitted by the the Finance Committee. This resolution authorizes specified budget amendments and transfers. This resolution requires a 2/3 supermajority vote.
Motion by Supervisor Rakowski, seconded by Supervisor Dodge. Discussion. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Supervisor Splinter, seconded by Supervisor Jankowski. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.